Okay, so you know how you sent us that article about big food and big tobacco?
Yeah.
And like it asks if they're using the same playbook, you know? Like if the food industry is kind of taking cues from big tobacco.
Right.
So it's called Big Food and Big Tobacco. Is History Repeating Itself?
Okay.
And it's from Revitalize Metabolic Health by Dr. Christopher J. Stather.
Gotcha.
And you basically wanted like a breakdown, you know,
Yes.
without getting too lost in the weeds.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do.
Yep.
Pull out those key takeaways and see what these parallels might mean, you know,
Yes.
for all the food we see like on the shelves and everything.
For sure. For sure. This is this article really makes you think, you know, whether these two industries that seem so different could actually have these like fundamental similarities.
Yeah.
Like in their strategies and how they impact us.
Yeah.
It's a big question.
It is.
Worth exploring for sure.
So the article starts off talking about the history of tobacco.
Right.
And it's crazy to think about now, but there was a time where they actually promoted tobacco as being healthy.
I know.
And can you even imagine?
Wild, isn't it?
It's just so bizarre. Like they even used endorsements from doctors in their ads.
It's shocking, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about what we know now.
Wow.
Like the article mentions the whole "more doctors" slogan.
Yeah.
It shows you how effective that marketing was. Like they were using these trusted figures to totally mislead people.
It makes you wonder, right?
It really does.
Like what kind of strategies are they using today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
And it wasn't like people suddenly changed their minds about tobacco, right?
No.
It was this huge, long battle.
Definitely.
The article points out that the fight against big tobacco started like way back in the 1950s with lawsuits.
Yeah.
And they weren't successful at first, like at holding the industry accountable.
Right. It's a really important thing to remember.
Yeah.
Like it took decades.
Yeah.
It really shows how powerful the tobacco industry was. They had all this money and resources.
Yeah.
And they fought back, even though there was all this evidence against them.
So it makes you think,
are
we in for the same kind of long fight with big food?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what would that even look like?
I know.
Yeah.
And then there's the reaction a lot of us have, right?
Right.
Myself included.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, we're talking about food.
Yeah.
How can you compare like a burger or a bag of chips to cigarettes?
Totally. Like it just seems different.
But the article really challenges that. It asks us to think, is the difference really that clear?
Yeah, like are we giving food a pass?
Right.
Because we think of it as something we need.
You
know, something good.
Yeah.
And are we missing something?
Right.
Like, are there things going on in the food industry that we're not seeing?
Right.
Because we're not looking at it the same way we look at tobacco.
Totally.
It's a really interesting challenge.
It is.
To our assumptions about food.
And then that leads to the main point of the article.
Okay.
Those similarities between big food and big tobacco.
Right.
Which are kind of scary when you really think about it.
For sure.
They have 4 main points.
Okay.
So the first one is both industries are dominated by just a handful of companies.
Right. Just a few major players.
Yeah. And
that gives them a lot of power.
Huge power.
You know, they can influence the whole market.
Right.
And it makes it hard for smaller companies to compete.
Yeah.
Especially healthier ones.
Right.
So for you as a consumer, that means you have fewer choices. And the whole system might be more focused on profit than on health.
Right.
It's a big deal.
It is. And then the second similarity is this one's really concerning.
Yeah.
They target young children with their marketing to create lifelong customers.
It's like,
I mean, we all see it, right?
We see it everywhere.
The cartoon characters on cereal boxes, the bright colors.
Yeah.
All aimed at kids.
That's like, when you think about big tobacco doing the same thing, it's like, whoa.
It's not so innocent anymore.
No, not at all.
It feels really strategic.
Very calculated.
Yeah, and kind of disturbing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The goal is to hook them young, create those habits early.
Brand loyalty.
Yeah, brand loyalty.
Yeah.
And it worked for big tobacco.
Yeah.
So if big food is doing the same thing, it's worrisome.
Yeah.
What's that going to mean?
For future generations.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a big question.
And then the third similarity is creating addictive habits.
Right.
With tobacco, it's the nicotine, obviously. But the article says that big food engineers its products to be addictive too.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe a little uncomfortable.
I know.
Like, Big Tobacco figured out how to deliver nicotine to create addiction.
Yeah.
And now the food industry is doing the same thing.
Right.
They're making what they call hyperpalatable foods.
Hyperpalatable.
Yeah. These are foods that are designed to overstimulate your brain, your reward system.
And make us overeat.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
It's not just that they taste good. It's that they're engineered to make you want more than you would naturally.
Like, think about
like those snacks you can't stop eating.
Yeah.
The textures, the flavors.
It's like they know exactly what to put in there to make it irresistible.
You got it down to a science.
It's kind of scary.
It is.
And then there's this concept of the bliss point.
Oh, yeah. The bliss point.
Which is...
So the bliss point is like the perfect combination of flavors and sensations.
So they're finding that exact spot where it's like the most appealing.
The most appealing.
It's crazy.
It is. It's like...
Like they're hacking our brains.
Yeah, they're hacking our brains.
To make us eat more.
Yes, and overriding our natural signals.
Wow.
Like, when you're full, these foods can bypass that.
It's not just about taste anymore.
No.
It's like they're messing with our biology.
It's like they're taking advantage of our biology.
And the article even has data.
Oh, yeah.
To back this up.
What kind of data?
A study found that foods developed by companies with ties to the tobacco industry were way more likely to be hyperpalatable.
Interesting.
Like 29% more likely to be high in fat and sodium.
Wow.
And 80% more likely to be high in carbs and sodium.
That's huge.
Yeah, compared to companies without those tobacco connections.
That's really significant.
So it's not just a theory.
No, this sounds like there's a connection.
It's like they're using what they learned from tobacco.
To make us crave these foods.
Exactly.
It's a little scary.
It is. Yeah. So the article's main point is Big Food is following Big Tobacco's playbook, using these tactics to get us hooked on processed food.
And when you think about how big these companies are, how much money they have for marketing.
It's a lot of power.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even fight that?
It's tough.
Yeah.
And the author says the stakes might be even higher with food.
Than with tobacco.
Yeah, because food is seen as essential.
Right. We have to eat.
Right, we can't just quit eating.
Exactly.
Like, we can quit smoking.
So we're constantly exposed to these products.
And we don't think of it as being dangerous.
No, we think of it as being good.
Yeah.
And necessary.
So we let our guard down.
Right.
And that's how we end up eating all this stuff.
It might not be good for us in the long run.
It's a really good point.
It is.
And then the article talks about Dr. Statter's perspective.
Yeah.
He's both a doctor and a parent.
Okay.
So he's really invested in the health of kids and future generations.
Makes sense.
And he talks about improving health spans.
Health spans.
Yeah. So
what's that?
That's not just how long you live, but how long you live in good health.
Oh, I see.
Free from disease.
It's quality of life.
Yeah, quality of life.
Not just quantity.
Exactly.
That's important.
Yeah, and it really adds that human element to the whole discussion.
It's not just about money.
Right.
It's about people.
Yeah, and their health.
And their lives.
So to sum it all up,
we've
looked at the similarities between Big Food and Big Tobacco.
Right.
Like the dominance of a few companies, the targeting of kids, the addictive qualities of the food.
And the blame shifting.
Yeah, the blame shifting.
Onto the consumer.
And that connection to the tobacco industry.
Yeah, the historical connection.
Just like history might be repeating itself.
It really makes you think.
It does.
About what you're eating.
Yeah.
And who's controlling it all.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
So here's a final thought for you.
Okay.
We talked about how these foods are engineered to be hyper-palatable.
Right.
And to override our natural signals. So how does that change your perspective on willpower?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and personal responsibility when it comes to food.
Because it's like, it's not just about making good choices.
Right.
There are these forces.
Working against us.
Yeah, working against us.
Yeah.
Pushing us to eat more.
It's a lot to consider.
It is.
This is just the beginning of a really important conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for exploring this with us.
Of course.
It's been great.
Yeah, it has.
Until next time. See ya.
Bye.